It starts with a routine update that arrives too carefully worded to be routine. A few lines, a few reassurances. And yet everyone who understands palace language hears the alarm underneath. Something has changed. William reads it once, then again, because the phrasing isn't meant to inform, it's meant to contain. Catherine doesn't panic. She goes quiet. Because when the palace tries this hard to sound calm, it's usually because calm is about to become a strategy, not a feeling. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. In this fictional account, the update doesn't arrive like news. It arrives like choreography, tight, polished, so careful it almost feels nervous. A tightly controlled health update circulates internally before it's public, and the fact that it appears inside first is the first warning sign. The palace is preparing reactions before it prepares information. That tells William everything he needs to know. This isn't about sharing, it's about shaping. Certain words are avoided, and others are repeated with almost unnatural consistency, reassurance language designed to slow panic, not to explain reality. Routine, stable, continuing. The kind of words that sound comforting until you notice what's missing. Specifics, timelines, context. William reads it once, then again, not because he's confused, but because he's listening for the silence between the phrases. Palace language isn't only what it says, it's what it refuses to say. And the refusals are loud. William senses the update is designed to manage reactions, not share facts. It's built to hold the room steady while something else happens behind the curtain. He can feel it in the structure: short lines that discourage questions, reassuring phrases that imply closure, a soft tone that tries to make curiosity sound inappropriate. He recognizes the tactic instantly. This isn't an update that invites understanding. It's an update that demands obedience. Catherine doesn't panic. She goes quiet. And that quiet is not weakness, it's calculation. Her instinct is immediate and dual: protect the children and stabilize optics simultaneously, because she knows how quickly a single update becomes a wave. Staff become anxious, advisors become urgent, rumors become narratives. And narratives, once they form, don't ask permission before they wrap themselves around the family. Catherine's mind moves straight to the places pressure will land first: the children's routines, the family's schedule, the public calendar, but will suddenly be treated like a tool instead of a plan. In this story, you can feel the palace machine shifting into continuity mode before anyone admits it's doing so. Doors close more gently than usual. Conversations become shorter and more formal. People begin speaking as if every word might be repeated later. The air takes on that careful quality the palace gets when it is trying to look calm while it is quietly rearranging its priorities. That's when William's discomfort turns into something colder, because calm isn't a feeling now. Calm is an instruction. Foreshadow arrives in the form of a sentence that lands like a siren disguised as professionalism. "We need a continuity plan today." A senior aide says it, with no drama, as if it's standard procedure, but the urgency behind the word "today" changes everything. Continuity doesn't get rushed unless the palace believes time is tighter than it's admitting. William hears it and realizes the update wasn't written to reassure the public. It was written to buy time for internal movement. Then, the cliffhanger settles in: quiet, heavy, unavoidable. The update implies immediate adjustments to duties and access. Not next month. Not as needed. Immediate, that word carries a shadow. Immediate means schedules will shift without explanation. Immediate means briefings will be rerouted. Immediate means certain people will be allowed closer and certain people will be kept at a distance, all under the umbrella of protecting stability. And William can already feel the subtle repositioning beginning like pieces on a chessboard, being moved while the audience is told the game hasn't changed. William looks up from the message and realizes the palace isn't just trying to keep the world calm, it's trying to keep control. And in royal life, control always comes with one brutal question: who gets to hold the steering wheel when the truth is treated like something dangerous? And as the palace moves to smooth the surface, William realizes the real crisis isn't the update, it's who will steer the crown while the truth is being rationed. The palace calls it support. Behind closed doors, it feels like a transfer of power without a ceremony. Meetings are shifted. Access is tightened, briefings multiply. And suddenly William isn't being asked, he's being positioned. Catherine watches the machine turn its attention toward them like a spotlight that doesn't warm, it burns. Because in royal life, stepping forward isn't always promotion. Sometimes it's containment, an attempt to keep the future stable by using the future as a shield. In this fictional account, the first change is so subtle it almost passes as normal scheduling. A diary reshuffle, an adjustment. A new meeting title that looks harmless until you notice how many of those harmless titles now include William's name. Subtle schedule changes place William and Catherine at the center, not as a choice, but as a gravitational pull the palace applies when it senses instability. It isn't a request for help, it's a repositioning of responsibility. Then the access lists begin to shift. Who can speak to whom? Who can brief whom? Who is allowed into which rooms and which conversations? Briefing priorities quietly reorganize, as if the palace is sorting information like medicine, measured doses, carefully timed, delivered to the right people in the right order. Advisors frame it as duty, but it feels like urgency with hidden stakes. The palace isn't simply asking William to step forward. It's building a corridor that funnels decisions toward him before he even agrees to carry them. That's when Catherine's instincts sharpen. She watches the machine and recognizes the pattern. In crisis, the palace doesn't just seek stability, it seeks narrative control. A do not discuss externally note appears softly phrased, politely distributed, but heavy with consequence. It's the palace's way of saying, "We are not sharing what we know, we are managing what you will say." The note makes Catherine's stomach turn because it confirms the update wasn't written to inform. It was written to contain. And now containment is expanding beyond information into people. The emotional punch hits William hardest when he realizes he's being pulled into decisions he didn't authorize. Not because he's power-hungry, but because he's being positioned to own outcomes without being given full truth. Decisions arrive in his orbit, already shaped, already framed as inevitable, already soft. Tenured with continuity, William can feel the trap forming. If he cooperates, he becomes responsible. If he resists, he looks destabilizing. Either way, the palace gets what it wants: control over the pace of the story. Then the cliffhanger lands in Catherine's sharper awareness. She notices someone is managing what William sees first. Not outright lying, filtering, sending certain briefings early, delaying others, packaging the most calming points at the top, and burying the most complicated points deeper. It's a subtle manipulation that feels almost polite, which is why it's so dangerous. Catherine realizes that if William is being fed the story in a curated order, then he isn't just stepping into leadership, he's stepping into a narrative designed by someone else. And once Catherine realizes information is being filtered, she understands the battle isn't about health, it's about narrative. In the palace, crisis doesn't create unity, it reveals factions. One court forms around protecting the king's privacy at all costs. Another forms around protecting the future reign from being contaminated by uncertainty. Advisors whisper. Handlers draft statements nobody asked for. Loyalists choose sides without naming the sides. Because the moment a health update shifts power, the monarchy becomes a chessboard, and the next move decides who controls the story. Court prioritizes containment and minimal disclosure. Their logic sounds protective, almost noble. Protect the king, protect dignity, protect calm. But Catherine hears the darker implication: containment can become control, and control can become a shield for people who benefit from secrecy. Court B prioritizes continuity, optics, and operational clarity. Their logic is colder but efficient. The public must see stability. The schedule must continue. The machine must look unshaken. They treat uncertainty like contamination. Anything that must be scrubbed from the image before it reaches the public eye. William and Catherine become the center of gravity overnight. And that sounds like honor until you feel what it actually means. Every faction starts pulling at them. Every aide wants them to endorse a plan. Every strategist wants them to appear at the right moment, say the right phrase, stand in the right place. They are no longer just family members reacting to a health update. They are instruments the palace wants to use to signal continuity whether or not they have enough truth to do it honestly. Meanwhile, Charles' inner circle tightens, creating suspicion and resentment. Doors close, access narrows, certain people become harder to reach. Information becomes more guarded, not only from the public but from William and Catherine too. And the foreshadowing becomes unmistakable when one aide repeats a phrase like a mantra, stability over truth. It's said as if it's wisdom, but it lands like a threat. Because choosing stability over truth means you are willing to sacrifice clarity to preserve control. It means you will ration reality to keep the surface smooth. Then the cliffhanger drops with chilling precision. A private meeting is scheduled without William's consent. Not just scheduled, but arranged as if attendance is expected, as if decisions will be made whether he's ready or not. William sees the meeting list and feels the cold shape of what's happening. The palace isn't waiting for him to lead, it's trying to lead through him. And when William sees the meeting list, he realizes something chilling. Decisions are being made in his name. Catherine doesn't fight for headlines. She fights for her family's survival inside a machine that eats privacy. The moment the health update lands, she sees the next danger instantly, the children, because when uncertainty rises, the palace reaches for Sai. MB, alls and nothing is more symbolic than the next generation. Catherine draws a quiet line that terrifies everyone who hears it. They will take charge, yes, but the children will not be used as reassurance for a frightened public. In this fictional account, Catherine's first move is not public. It's internal. She tightens the family's private circle immediately. Fewer people, fewer gaps, fewer casual moments where worry can turn into rumor. She doesn't announce the boundary like a threat. She lives it. She reduces exposure the way someone closes windows during a storm. Not because the storm is visible, but because she can feel it coming. And the palace feels it too, which is why the pressure arrives fast. Wrapped in politeness, the palace offers comfort in the form it knows best. Optics, a carefully framed family moment. A suggestion delivered with gentle language and a warm smile, something about reassurance, about calming the public, about showing continuity. But Catherine refuses the photo op framed as comfort because she can see the truth underneath the softness. Comfort, in this context, isn't for the children. It's for the institution. It's the palace trying to borrow innocence to stabilize fear. Catherine's calm becomes steel as she makes it clear, without drama, that the children will not be used to soothe anyone else's uncertainty. William struggles with the collision that defines this chapter: duty to crown versus duty to home. He understands why advisors want visibility. He understands why the palace wants symbols. But he also understands what Catherine understands. Once you use the children as reassurance, you teach the institution that it can reach for them again and again. And that is how privacy disappears, not in one scandal, but in 1,000 reasonable requests that slowly make the family's private life belong to the machine. Foreshadow sharpens when an aide suggests a family moment for optics, with just a little too much confidence, as if it's already been drafted, already been scheduled, already been approved, somewhere without asking the parents first. Catherine feels the violation before it's even acted on, because she knows how this works. The palace doesn't always ask permission. It builds inevitability. It prepares the path and expects you to walk it. Then the cliffhanger arrives in the most chilling form. Catherine discovers a draft plan referencing the children's schedule, not a vague idea. A plan, dates, times, placements. The kind of document that treats a child's presence like an asset to deploy. Catherine reads it once, then again, and the fear that rises isn't panic. It's clarity. Because a plan like this isn't written in an emergency unless someone believes the emergency might last longer than they're admitting. And when William reads the plan, he realizes the palace isn't preparing for recovery. It's preparing for uncertainty. Suddenly, everything becomes operational. Not emotional, not personal. Operational. A new briefing cadence, new sign-off routes, new gatekeepers. William and Catherine are treated like they're already in charge, without any formal announcement, without any clear limits, and without any guarantee the public will accept it. The palace tries to make the transition invisible, but invisibility is its own confession. They are afraid of what the truth would do if said out loud. In this fictional telling, the speed of the shift is what exposes it. New approval chains appear for public engagements and messaging, quietly at first, then everywhere. A different name on a sign-off line, a new gatekeeper, just helping. A rerouted briefing that lands on William's desk before it lands on anyone else's. Continuity language enters internal notes like a chant stability, reassurance, discipline, woe. Words that sound responsible until you realize they're being used to justify control. William insists on clarity. What's temporary versus permanent? He isn't refusing duty. He's refusing blindness. Catherine demands boundaries alongside him. No children, no emotional exploitation, because she knows the machine will always reach for the easiest symbol if nobody blocks it. But the palace, trained to survive by smoothing surfaces, keeps trying to move forward without defining anything. Because undefined power is easier to steer. Foreshadow appears in a memo that references a decision window, a time frame, a closing point, a kind of phrase that suggests certain choices are about to be locked in quietly, then presented as inevitable later. William feels the corridor narrowing around him. If the window closes, the palace will say the new structure is simply how things must be now. And once that happens, pushing back becomes disruptive, even if pushing back is the only way to protect integrity. Then the cliffhanger cuts through the operational calm like a blade. William learns a key document was withheld from him. Not misplaced, withheld. Something that should be in his briefing pack, missing on purpose. In that moment, his suspicion turns from discomfort to certainty. Because if information is being filtered at the exact moment he's being positioned to take charge, then he isn't being empowered. He's being managed. And once William realizes something is being hidden, he stops cooperating and starts investigating. The most dangerous part of a palace statement is what it refuses to name. William's team spots the omission immediately. A gap where specifics should be. A phrase repeated to distract from what's missing. Catherine feels the air change again, because omissions aren't accidental, they're chosen. And once something is chosen to be hidden, the question becomes brutal. H. Hidden from the public, or hidden from William too. In this fictional account, the palace statement reads like a calm surface laid over moving water. William's advisors don't react to the reassuring words, they react to the empty spaces. They highlight inconsistencies between internal and external language, small shifts in phrasing that look innocent to outsiders, but scream intention to people who live inside the system. The internal version suggests urgency without admitting it. The external version suggests normalcy without proving it, and the gap between the two becomes its own confession. The truth is being rationed. A neutral verifier flags risk of misinterpretation, quietly escalating fear, and that single line lands like a warning label on a medicine bottle. It means someone professional, someone who cares about consequences more than loyalty, sees danger in the way the message is constructed. Misinterpretation risk isn't about the public misunderstanding. It's about the palace being accused of misleading. It's about the institution being caught shaping reality instead of sharing it. William starts questioning who controls medical adjacent messaging, fictionalized here as a web of advisors, handlers, and gatekeepers who decide what is said, when it is said, and to whom it is said. He isn't trying to pry into private details for curiosity. He's trying to protect the integrity of leadership, because if he's being positioned to take charge while the real picture is withheld, then he isn't being trusted, he's being used. And that is the moment trust turns into threat. Foreshadow sharpens into pattern recognition when a familiar aid name appears near every missing detail moment. Not proof of wrongdoing, but but a repeated presence at the points where information changes shape. William notices it. Catherine notices it faster. Because Catherine isn't only listening to double odds, she's watching who delivers them, who delays them, who insists on timing, who always seems to be helping right when clarity is needed most. The emotional punch hits William hard. He feels managed, not informed, like he's being led through a corridor of curated truth while being told he's walking freely. Then the cliffhanger arrives with a phrase that turns unease into alarm. Someone suggests a second version of the update exists. Not a draft, not a working copy. A second version implying choice, implying alternatives, implying the palace decided which truth to publish and which truth to keep behind closed doors. William hears it and feels something go cold inside him, because once there are versions, there is narrative. And once there is narrative, power is already being exercised. And when William hears second version, he understands the palace isn't managing health, it's managing power. Now it isn't just a family issue, it's vulnerability. If the wrong person gets the wrong paragraph, it becomes a story about legitimacy, who is steering, who is hiding, and who is being positioned. Offers get made, narratives get drafted. Fractions prepare selective leaks like weapons. William realizes the palace isn't a sanctuary right now. It's a maze with ears in the walls, and every whisper has a price. In this fictional telling, the moment second version enters the air, factions start moving like rival machines. Competing factions plan selective leaks to control blame and outcome, because leaks aren't always accidents in palace life. Sometimes they are strategy. One side wants to leak reassurance to calm markets and public nerves, even if it's incomplete. Another wants to leak urgency, to force faster action and justify tighter control. Another wants to leak just enough to make William look impatient, so the palace can blame any instability on the air, not the machine error. And the king. The king's household pushes containment to avoid destabilization, and containment feels like kindness until it becomes a cage. It means fewer people know the full picture. It means fewer conversations happen without supervision. It means more do not discuss notes, more controlled briefings, more careful choreography. William's circle monitors risk to future stability, not because they want drama, but because they can see how quickly legitimacy becomes fragile when leadership looks unclear. If the public suspects the palace is hiding more than it's saying, trust drops fast, and trust is the monarchy's oxygen. Catherine is pressured to appear more, not less, more visibility, more calm smiles, more reassurance. She resists because she understands what the palace is trying to do, borrow her steadiness as proof everything is fine. But Catherine knows steadiness can become exploitation if it's demanded rather than chosen. The more they push her, the clearer it becomes that the palace doesn't just want stability, it wants a symbol to hold up while it moves pieces behind the curtain. Then the cliffhanger hits with that quiet, lethal palace tone. William is warned, someone is watching who he speaks to. The warning isn't dramatic, it's practical. It means calls can be noticed. Meetings can be tracked. Conversations can be reported. William realizes he isn't only fighting uncertainty, he's fighting surveillance disguised as order. Foreshadow tightens into a ticking clock when he hears the final chilling detail. A second copy of a key memo is already circulating. Not might exist, already circulating. That means control is already slipping. That means someone anticipated confrontation and prepared insurance. That means the truth, whatever it is starting to move faster than the palace can contain it. And with the leak threat rising, the next step isn't messaging, it's confrontation. William doesn't raise his voice, he raises the standard. He demands one thing the palace hates giving: clarity. Not reassurance, not spin. Clarity. Because if he's expected to take charge, he will not do it blind. Catherine stands beside him without softness, because she understands what's at stake. The crown cannot be stabilized by managed truth. The moment William confronts the gatekeepers, the room goes quiet, because quiet is what happens when control is challenged. In this fictional account, the confrontation isn't theatrical. It's surgical. William frames it as protecting the institution, not accusing individuals, because accusation invites defensiveness, and defensiveness invites delay. He refuses delay. He doesn't want comfort phrases or carefully staged optimism. He wants the full picture, delivered without filters, without timing considerations, without the palace's favorite trick of smoothing rough edges until the edge disappears. The palace hears him, and the room tightens not because they disagree, but because they recognize what his demand threatens: the system's ability to ration truth. The system's ability to ration truth. Catherine reinforces boundaries at the same time, and her boundaries land like steel wrapped in calm. No children, no optics exploitation, no using a family's private fear as reassurance for a frightened public. She refuses to let the palace borrow the next generation as a shield. Catherine's clarity is unsettling because she doesn't argue, she states. And when she states, she forces every aide in the room to admit what the palace has been doing, treating family as a tool to stabilize uncertainty. The palace responses arrive in sequence: predictable and revealing denial, deflection, counterattack, each escalating tension. Denial suggests there is nothing more to share, that everything is under control, that William is reacting to shadows. Deflection shifts toward procedure, toward privacy, toward appropriate channels, as if the right channel can replace the truth. Counterattack tries to flip the moral balance, implying William's insistence risks destabilizing the public, suggesting Catherine's boundaries are unhelpful, hinting that restraint equals loyalty. But the more the palace reacts, the more it exposes itself. Theme becomes unavoidable. Reactions reveal truth more than statements do. Foreshadow sharpens into certainty when someone murmurs the line that is never just a line. This will leak, not as a threat, as a fact. Because the moment control is challenged, control tries to protect itself. The palace can't keep both the truth and the narrative. It must choose. And when it chooses narrative, someone else chooses truth, usually through a leak, a screenshot, or a helpful anonymous clarification that travels faster than any official statement. Then the cliffhanger lands with a cold sting that confirms William's worst suspicion. A phrase from a private memo appears in public messaging. The same wording, the same cadence, the same carefully neutral tone. William hears it and knows instantly that the palace didn't simply communicate. It pre-wrote the story. It means the public calm was never spontaneous reassurance. It was a planned script. And if the script exists, then so does the hidden version, the one the public wasn't meant to see. And as the palace scrambles to contain what's already escaping, the final twist arrives, because the crisis wasn't the update, it was the test. Monarchies don't collapse in explosions. Why collapse in miscalculations, especially when the future arrives early? This health update forces the palace to face the uncomfortable reality. The next reign has already begun acting like it's in motion. William becomes the boundary. Catherine becomes the shield. Charles becomes the legacy at risk, and the chilling question remains: was this shift a temporary response, or the first rule of a new era? In this fictional telling, the legacy dilemma is brutal and simple: peace at any cost, or truth with consequences. Peace preserves appearances, but appearances can be a cage that keeps real decisions hidden until they rot from the inside. Truth risks fracture, but fracture might be the only way to prevent the monarchy from being steered by quiet gatekeepers instead of clear leadership. The institution needs stability. The humans inside it need trust. Both demand sacrifice, and the palace is terrified of being forced to admit which sacrifice it has been choosing all along. The emotional outcomes narrow into three hard roads: reconciliation, if clarity is finally allowed and boundaries are respected; fracture if control continues and the future refuses to be managed; or cold coexistence if everyone stays in position, smiles on cue, and privately accepts that trust has been replaced by procedure. Behind the scenes, the palace restructures access, advisors, and documentation flow, because once a machine is exposed, its first instinct is always to tighten its grip. More gatekeepers, more memos, more discipline, less truth, delivered later in smaller pieces. The ending sting refuses to fade. The second copy may surface, meaning the story isn't over. If there's a second version of the update, there can be a third. If there's a private memo, there can be more. And once duplicates exist, timing is no longer controlled by the palace. Someone else can ignite the next wave whenever it suits them. That's when the final twist settles in with chilling clarity. William realizes the update was used to measure obedience, not only to inform, to test who would comply, who would question, who would accept, manage truth, and who would demand the real thing. And as the palace returns to silence, one truth remains louder than ever. Some updates don't end a chapter, they ignite the next one. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.